What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Innovative Seller. This is going to be your go-to show to learn what's new, what's interesting in the world of sales and technology. Every single week, we're going to be bringing you interviews with some of the most forward-thinking thought leaders in the space. You get a chance to ask me questions in our Q&A section, and I'll break down the top trends in sales processes and technology every single show. So sit back and let's get into it. Episode number 7, Innovative Seller Show. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today. Very much looking forward, as always. I'm looking forward to this. But today's episode, why I think it's going to be so transformative is I'm going to start off pretty hard talking about how we need to bring innovation back to sales at the rep level. You can't be over-focused on only the smartest people in the room coming up with a solution. That's not usually how you come up with it. So I'm going to talk about Moonshots. The interview today, you are going to love this. It's a panel. And what I love about this panel is it's moderated by Jared Robin. But the really cool part is I've got 4 practitioners. These are SDRs, AEs. These are people who are on the front lines setting meetings right now, who are going to teach you some of their tips and tricks on what they're doing to cut through the noise. Again, crowdsourcing our innovation here, right? And last, but certainly not least, I'm going to talk in tech trends about sales tech AI. What's noise? What actually works? And then what are 2 actionable ways that you can cut through the noise and find something that might work for you? Make sure to subscribe so you always get notified whenever the new episodes drop. And let's jump in to some of these trends in sales process. All right, my innovative sellers, we are going to jump in sales process today to a concept called Moonshots. And so what I'm going to try to walk you through is how can you take big shots that might pay off without crashing? So why shake up the status quo, right? In the book, I talk about consistent performance optimization. It's literally the 4th C. It's one of the most important principles. But within that principle, I touch on the topic of moonshots. And there's a very specific reason of why I talk about it. It's that your organization needs a more consistent way to optimize process all day long. But we also need to build in the ability for people to do crazy, weird things that might just break the results for the good, right? So I'm going to give you 2 very tactical ways that you can always creating this consistent optimization mindset, consistent performance improvement, coupled with taking moonshots. Okay, hopefully, number 1, you've got in that rhythm where you have a process in place to review performance on an ongoing basis. One of the most important meetings that you can have is at least once a quarter, if not every 6 months, look for the outliers, right? Obviously, we want our team to come up with these different moonshots, but sometimes things might be working and we don't even know it. So number 1 is make sure you have an innovation meeting for your outbound, your sales process, or your customer success team, right? Every 3 months or every 6 months, where you look and you say, hey, out of the data points that we see, what are the ones that spiked out? Who are the reps that were overperforming? What were the specific things they were doing that were overperforming? It's really interesting. So often, we get together in these meetings and we're just looking for, again, the small improvements, which is what we should be doing. But every once in a while, again, on a relatively consistent basis, we need to be looking for what are those outliers that, wow, what if we took that moonshot this person did and brought it across the team? Number 2 is pretty simple, right? At least I'm hoping it's an easy concept, right? In the book, I talk about this idea of 80-15-5, which is 80% of your time being spent on things that are going to impact your day-to-day in the next month or 2, 15% of your time on things maybe the next 3 to 6 months, and 5% on things that are going to make your life easier down the road. So that's what we have to do. We have to make sure that our team has at least maybe an hour, 5% of their time, maybe an hour every single week. And if that's too crazy, maybe it's 30 minutes dedicated to new idea implementation, right? We have to, as leaders, right? Or even as a rep, you just need to block this time and say it's, heads down time. It's really easy to be like, oh no, I can catch up on email, I can do those things. But I'm telling you, you will not make big leaps if you don't have time dedicated to looking at or thinking about new things. Maybe it's you heard on the Innovative Seller Summit in the interview that you're about to listen to, a cool new idea, right? Go try it, go pilot it. So you have to have time baked into your week to think about innovation and try new things. So that's it, my friends, is you've got to have these kind of broader review schedules where you're looking at some of these spikes across the business. And then to take that to the macro, you as individual reps or you as leaders need to bake time weekly for people to try new things. Let's do it. Let's foster more innovation. Let's allow reps to be more creative. That's where we're going to find the big wins. So that's Moonshots, everyone. I hope that it gets you thinking about how you can bring this into your org, or maybe even just some really simple ways that you can try it. So make sure, everyone, make sure to subscribe so you get a notification every time a new episode comes out. And now, as promised, here is the interview with Jared and team.
So let's dive in. There's two parts of this, both some stories as well as some advice. So let's start out on a positive note and go around. Can you share a specific outbound strategy that you pivoted to in the last few years, which yielded significant results, and what made it so effective? We all know that the strategies you used 5 years ago don't work today. I want to unpack something that you've pivoted that's really working well. Let's start with Ashley.
I knew you were going to come to me first. I knew it. Probably. I mean, Anthony probably gets the same thing. Us A names always get called first. But here's the thing. I'm gonna call you out and push back, Jared. You say the strategies that we used 5 years ago don't work today. They do. They've just evolved. So the thing that I really pivoted, and my clients that I work with have really pivoted hard on to a couple of years ago, is personalization. And we know this, but what's changed, I think, is the way that people are personalized, because people are burned out on easy personalization. They're burned out on obvious personalization. They're not burned out on keeping things that are genuinely relevant and add value. So that means we have to work a little bit harder to figure out what that is. But once you can find a few of those, you're golden. So that's the big thing for us. And yeah, you can use AI to do that remarkably. It can help. It can supercharge. Don't be scared. Be smart, but don't be scared. But that's, I'd say, the biggest thing is personalization and the type of personalization that we're doing. So, for example, emails saying, "Oh my gosh, I see you went to Santa Clara University. Go Broncos. My cousin went there." It's like, ew, go away. But it's, hey, if you really want, I got an email actually, and I took this and stole it and used it a few other points. But they said, "Hey, you went to Santa Clara University. I see it's a Jesuit school, and they really have value accountability and giving back. We're a B Corp, and we value that so importantly that we made it a part of our company foundation. Here's what we do." I was like, oh, that got my attention. So it's getting more creative around exactly how you're personalizing versus just generically looking at their LinkedIn for 30 seconds and pulling random data in.
Does relevancy have anything to do with it, or just understanding the connection between the company and something personal?
Either. So I think I usually will encourage people to try 3 different levels of personalization, because everyone's going to hit people differently. You can hit on the company, because some people they only care about the company. Some people want the personal connection, and some people want a career connection. So those are the 3 things I try and hit people on. Is if you're going to hit, if you're going to do 3 hyper personalized emails, hit it with 3 different levels.
Nice. And Zoya, I'd love to hear your point of view.
Yeah. So my point of view is coming from 2 places. One is what I'm doing personally with Uncapped. The other is what I've seen a lot of my peers at Gong do as well. So that would be content creation. And it's funny, a lot of people will ask Gongsters, does Gong make you post to LinkedIn, or what's up with everyone? I think is always a little bit curious. I have a podcast. I've had Gongsters come on the podcast. I also had Jarrett Thomas come on the podcast. He has his own podcast, but one of the things that he was talking about was he was able to not do cold calling, which again, there are people who are going to come for me for that. I'm not saying don't do cold calling, but one of his points was he just leaned so hard into LinkedIn as a channel in terms of not just DMs and stuff like that, but creating valuable content that people were starting to come to him. That is definitely something that I utilize. And then just stories from the field with Gong too. I think we can all probably think of a couple of Gongsters who have gotten a lot of notoriety, traction, to the point where when people are curious about what to do with sales, whether they want to buy Gong or not, they seek out conversations with those folks. And then what a warm way, right? When you are ready to sell, what a warm way to go about it.
So yeah, love the brand that they built and how everybody leans in. I don't think you answered the question that you posed to yourself at the beginning, which was, does Gong require or build that in any type of way into
Yeah, I'll say this.
your soft KPIs, let's say?
Yeah. No, there's soft KPIs are like LinkedIn DMing and things like that. Like managers definitely coach to that. We work on that. But no, when it comes to personal brand, I think what Gong does right is they support people. Like when I speak to other folks about like building their brand, sometimes there's like a concern, like even people who have partnered with me on Uncapped, kind of like behind the scenes. Who aren't fully ready to like lean in or say like, yes, like I'm like working on Uncapped as like on the side or as whatever capacity their involvement is. Sometimes they have concerns that their company isn't going to support it. So I think that's like the big difference between Gong and some other companies where you might not see folks like using that channel. The leadership at Gong is just very supportive. The marketing team is very supportive. They do send like marketing content packs and things like that. But that's not even the bulk of the content. Like if we're talking about like some of the, like Brian LaManna, for example, years back, Sarah Brazier, I feel like was a really like prominent one. They're posting about things that are like personal to them more than they're posting even about the product.
Yeah. I mean, how else did, and this is, you know, an interesting one. How else did they enable, right? How else do they enable social? Because this is a big thing that you hear, especially in like younger companies. Like I like Gong, I like Chili Piper, I like these other brands. How do I get people to start and create an environment that's welcoming?
Yeah, I think like taking a cue from Gong, seeking out folks. Like I can just think of a couple of internal campaigns that were like both social and related to Gong. There was like one campaign that I was invited to do on allyship. So it was just me and my camera speaking about, you know, like my personal opinion on it. And that got posted. Like they seek out for a while, like work-life balance was a theme, and they were like going around, and this is when I say they, I mean the marketing team, was, you know, pinging folks at Gong who are like loud about their hobbies. You know, like some people are really into breath work, some people are into yoga, meditation, hiking, and just pinging those folks and being like, hey, like, would you want to tell your story like on the Gong page? And I think that's one way. That's like a very specific way. Yeah. I think the main way though, that gets it started, especially for folks who don't know like what to post. Recognition. That's another thing that I see a lot of companies are starting to do. My old coworker from Gong, now at Square, Tobias Carter, he will post like celebration of his team for hitting their number, like something that I feel like historically companies have done internally, right? That goes in the Slack channel. Maybe that goes at like the go-to-market corner or like whatever the like fireside chat is. But he's putting that recognition out there, tagging his team. They can share it to their page. Like I think just being more present on specifically LinkedIn as the channel for just social interactions, I think helps. Then people start to realize, oh, okay, like if I wanted to post something else, another one of my accomplishments, I could post that.
I love that. And then the person who works for the platform that so many people go on, Mr. Natoli, what's up? How is your outbound pivoted? You've had many types of roles in the past few years.
Yep.
I'm curious to hear your point of view.
Yeah. So I think tactics are great. There's definitely a time and place for them. But, you know, the thing about talking about tactics is they don't always apply to everyone. And so how I talk about outbound and prospecting is really a mindset shift of how you think about it. And then the tactics kind of follow from there. But with that said, I think for me, the mindset shift that I've had the last few years, even really like the last 6 months I was an SDR, which was like 6 years ago, and when I first became an AE, is really prospecting like I sell. And so what this actually looks like is shifting from I need to book 10 meetings per month to hit my quota to I'm trying to find 10 prospects that actually have a problem I can actually help with. Mm-hmm. And what that allows you to do is craft messaging that makes it about them, which relays the message of what's in it for them and why does what I'm talking about matter for them and their business. And what's interesting is most people don't prospect or outbound like that. But what's also interesting is that's how deals are closed, is helping prospect understand what's in it for them and why it matters to them and their business. And so it's been the shift for me of really helping prospects connect the dots and educating them. And so it's almost like a little bit of demand gen and then demand capture all in one. And so how you actually do that is you take a signal-led approach, which is understanding what's going on in their business to make an observation, to come up with a point of view, and then connecting that to a problem that you've already solved for other people like them, and then sharing how you've solved it before. And so if a prospect books a meeting based on that messaging, that's not just the prospect you've booked a meeting with. That's a prospect that you've now understood that the problem that you've talked about in your email is actually relevant to them. And guess what happens? Your meetings booked to SAO, conversions go up. And if you're an SDR setting meetings for AEs, you make your AEs very happy because you're giving them quality meetings. I think the second piece of this that I've seen work really well for myself and for other people that I've worked with is systemizing that that process. You don't wing it every day. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to, whether you're an SDR or AE, you open up your laptop on a Tuesday morning, you look at your screen and say, well, what do I do today? Every day looks different. And so it's this idea of building a process around a signal-led approach and knowing what problems connect to those triggers that you find. And so that you can quickly scale a relevant approach that doesn't take you, hours on end.
I love that. That's I subscribe to a bit of all. I like to have like a line of connection before doing that. Hey, we went to a Jesuit school together, and I noticed you just hired 14 reps, which means you're probably ready to upgrade from HubSpot to Salesforce. For instance, okay, conversely, what's a pivot or strategy that didn't work as planned? And what did you learn? Who wants to take this?
I can take this one. So everyone knows multi-threading is where it's at, right? Like at this point, buying software, there's going to be multiple stakeholders involved. Ideally, we have some groundswell just going into it, right? Even from people who aren't DMs. But at one point, strategy that I led was maybe like over-indexing on groundswelling. So just noticing that, kind of like what you're saying, Anthony, right? Every day you'll have a certain amount of time. It's up to you to also prioritize like who you're going after. Groundswell is great, but up to a point. And especially if you're like training SDRs, you just have to be really, really clear on the like reasons for why you're groundswelling. So to kind of like fast forward to what happened, we rolled out a strategy. There was an intentional piece where it was like, hey, instead of just going straight to the top, instead of just booking those meetings with the decision makers, let's do some research like on the ground, like set up calls with end users, people who we know aren't going to be involved in the decisions, but see if you can get an understanding of the business, things that maybe you wouldn't, read online, or if it's a company that isn't public, we're not going to be able to find those things in a 10K. And we just over-indexed on it, right? We were at the point where like SDRs were just celebrating all of these meetings. It was great. Lots of things were on the calendar, but we weren't at power. And so the opportunities, like if you're going to groundswell, maybe make it really clear, like when they should actually enter like pipeline, or when it should be counted as an opportunity. So that was a learning, to just be really clear if you're going to introduce groundswell as a motion, to just have really clear like guardrails on how much you need. And then like the fact that it's not necessarily an opportunity just because you booked a meeting with someone who revealed information about the company. That's more research, not necessarily an opportunity.
Excellent. Anybody want to add to it? Share your war stories and what you've learned to become better.
I think I might be. Am I lagging a little bit here?
I could also be lagging too. I think you're fine.
I think you might be lagging.
All right.
Well, I was gonna say, while he's troubleshooting, I can jump in. I can give you two things
please.
that, and I'll say this too, just to double up on what Anthony said. The tips and tactics are great, but the fact of the matter is 80% of them are not going to be relevant to you or won't work in your situation. So test everything. But I'll say the number one tactic that I've ripped out in the past year, where I come into a situation and I'm evaluating what they're doing. And the number one thing that we pull because it's not working is gift cards from meetings. There is a way to do it and have it work. Let me be very clear. There is a way to do it and have it work. But that's where you've got a preset list. It's highly exclusive and it's more pushing people who you know are going to be great meetings over the line versus what I see a lot of is, oh, I'm going to blast this 2,000 person list of people that do have persona and ICP match and see if they show up to meetings. And then you end up with a lot of people who just want a free lunch. And yeah, maybe you get some stuff out of it, but the ROI is not there usually. So that's one. The other thing I'll say to
how do you think I got this microphone, by the way? Honest, true story. This is a much better lunch.
Yeah, there's all shameless plug. There are ways to make it work. And I'll say this, I'm talking gift cards, not gifts like a microphone or something. Like gifting campaigns.
Oh, it didn't work. I wasn't qualified from Go. I just took it because of that. Okay,
well then that was again another example of a bad campaign. 100%. But I'll say the other to counterpoint my earlier point. I'd say the other number two mistake that I've dealt with is over personalization. And what I mean by that is an over reliance on hyper personalized messaging, and they forego volume. So yes, it's easy to get caught in spam filters. That doesn't mean you send less email. It means you send smarter email. And a lot of people think, oh, well, I'm just going to write 10 hyper-personalized emails. Like you will not get the volume you need to get your meetings. Period. So making sure you're not over-personalizing and sacrificing volume is also really, and especially now with the new rules and everything, like just because the rule change does not mean you get to slow down significantly. It means you have to get better.
Anything to add, Anthony?
Yeah. It might be a hot take, but I don't think power dialers work for every org. And I think the reasons why are important to discuss. You know, my last company, I walked into a tech stack. We had a power dialer, but I realized our meetings booked, like majority of them came from email and LinkedIn. So people would leverage the dialer, they make a ton of dials, but like we weren't converting any meetings, and the meetings that we did convert aren't converting to SAOs. And so the power dialer, while like, yeah, it made the team more efficient with dialing, it wasn't a good fit for our ICP and where most of the meetings ultimately came from. So I think, you know, that's just one example of saying every channel isn't the right, you know, channel for every organization. You know, if you're selling to sales and marketing, your people are on LinkedIn. If you're selling to like security, if you hit them up with a LinkedIn connection, they'll probably block you, you know, who knows? But you really need to, I call it like the read the room method. You need to meet prospects where they're at and use the channels that they're already using, whether that's community, they may be on communities. You may need to go to events. Like you really need to understand where your prospects are and meet them there.
Spot on. Couldn't agree more. And you know, just to add something, like I think automation and speed and stuff can both work and not work today. Both. If you have a really targeted ICP of 125 accounts that are all below Series B, Send them all personal emails, like maybe not personal, but like one at a time. Don't fucking rip it. Pardon me. Here's the sharpness. You don't need a power dialer if they all have one director of demand gen and sometimes a VP above them 20% of the time. Like, no, but if everyone you're going after is like the Nikes, whatever, and there's 25 to 30 different contacts in there, sometimes automation will be significantly better to penetrate faster and then do like little things on top. That's what I've learned. So a strategy of automation that I had massive success with, now that I have a smaller fine-tuned ICP with like people that are like all in my community and stuff, it's a benefit, but I'm not going to use it anyway. So let's talk about AI. I want to understand, like, what are some of the generative AI tools that have transformed your outbound sales strategy? And then I'm curious, as a part 2 of this, being conscious of time, like, what do we think about the future of that? Like what advice do you have with setting up AI?
I can jump in.
Yeah.
I can talk about how I've used it. What I will say is I worry about tools like AI because majority, unfortunately, of people are looking for shortcuts and silver bullets, and it's very easy to, use it to like send a ton of automated emails, which may not always work in your favor. But what I think it can really benefit is cutting out a lot of the manual upfront work. And so I don't sell sales nav at LinkedIn, but a subtle plug is they have their account IQ, which summarizes a ton of information about that company, some of the challenges, people you should reach out to, headcount. So a lot of the stuff that you may have had to do manually, I think things like that can surface information to you quickly so that you can reduce the time from account selection to quality relevant message is where I see AI really helping sellers, especially if you're thinking about outbound or prepping for a call. Like, that saves a ton of time. I think another big one is the ability to automate 10K research. I think there's a tool out there that helps with it. So I think all tools that help eliminate manual research can be helpful, but I still think a human is the best person to, craft an email, do an actual call. But that's just my opinion.
Zoya, what do you think? You've been around some pretty far-fetched, far-advancing technologies.
I'll support everything that Anthony just mentioned. I'll like add to it as well. I guess just another AI product, also not a plug because I don't work at Gong anymore. I don't get any commission or anything like that. But just to add like another use case where, as we're talking about how to improve your research, like even in Gong, you can ask like, what are the reasons that the prospect is interested in taking next steps? Like that's something that we started using for SDRs to like pulse check, like, should I be passing this to an AE or do I need to continue to do discovery? So I think that's an example of how we can also use AI, like some of those tools. A tool that I want to talk about because I'm obsessed with it lately. They're one of our partners at Uncapped, Hyperbound. So I really love the use case for AI to help salespeople sharpen their calling skills. So yeah, I think it's really cool. I think it's also one of those things where you just, you're not even taking a human out of the equation necessarily. I guess you're taking a human who's like usually not scalable. So usually you would role play with your manager, right? But your manager can't role play 50 reps with you in a week when they have, X amount of people on their team. It gets even harder when you're trying to like not just role play cold calls, but like really role play discovery. And so something really cool, and this can be like I feel like there's like a couple of bot or like AI bot prospect companies that are emerging. I had such a fun time putting together a script because you can truly just like go at it with the AI. My first one was absolutely terrible. Like I did not book the meeting. I'm embarrassed that exists out there. But the second one I booked the meeting, I was like, okay, that's something to work with. Literally copied and pasted the transcript and then like started reworking it. Like I was able to see like what I said under pressure and like go back and fine tune it. and then do it again. And you get like, at least with this one, with Hyperbound, you get very similar responses if you say similar things. So I was able to almost like A/B test my conversation. Like that's something that you don't really get to do. We as marketers, right? You can A/B test email, but to literally like A/B test what I might say in a call is really cool. And also you can like, I don't know, I need to talk to the founders again, but the more I did it, the less patient the AI got. I don't really know. All of a sudden they changed their attitude, which was also really fun. Like then it put me in a position where I was like, oh, okay, like I know that this this AI prospect is going to like cut me off very quickly, but I also know that I had a value prop that worked really well when they were more patient. So it just got me, like, I'm putting myself in the mind of a rep to like really focus on the things that are important, that are really difficult sometimes for a coach to instruct, right? Like as a coach, we're always saying everything you need, like the first 5 words out of your mouth need to give you permission to say the next 2 sentences, and the next 2 sentences need to actually build so that you can get to, but it was like all happening in real time because you just get shut down and it's like very cold, but it's like to the benefit, right? Because then you can approach it like more scientifically rather than just having it be this kind of like hocus pocus, like, oh, they're in a bad mood. I don't know. It's very, I strongly recommend anyone who's working on their, specifically cold calling, but really like any sales conversation, to check out like any of these AI prospects. It is so cool if you like sit down and like do the reps.
Shout out to their founders. Really cool product they made. Ashley, anything that you're using now and also in the future?
Yeah, what am I not using right now? I have all the tools. I'm obsessed.
Okay.
I have a bit of an addiction to AI. So here's the thing. As I see it for AI falls into, especially for sales, one, they are not going to replace us, period. Sorry. They're not even close to the Turing test. Humans to humans will always win. Now, that said,
You don't think they'll replace average or below average ones of us?
I think they will.
Nobody's below average, but they might be performing below.
I think they'll force. I think like every jump in technology, it will force humans to up their game. Mm-hmm. But it does that because it allows us to specialize. So this is kind of where I'm going. Is look, AI is great for 2 types of tasks. It's great for automating low brain power, high frequency activity. So research, generating things, syncing things between things based on logic rules and stuff like that. AI is great for that. So I have a ton of prompts. I'm now writing GPTs for myself, so I don't have to remember how to do these things again. So I can just auto run them for emails, for scripts, for reports, for freaking everything. It's fantastic. The other thing AI is really great at is amplifying what we're doing. So kind of what Zoe's talking about, where you can do a lot of reps, you can fake things. I love coaching. I love coaching. I hate listening to call recordings. I hate it. It's boring. And it's not super effective. I can now plug that stuff into AI. I can have it analyze 50 calls and tell me which ones of those I should be going and listening to and go and do all that. Now, yes, that's been around for a while with a gong or something like that. But if your company didn't have a gong, you were on your own. And this is the other side of it. This is where I say the amplification comes in. AI, and specifically ChatGPT, is going to economize skills. So if I don't have a tool, I can probably use ChatGPT to do an approximation of it. Is it going to be as good? No. But can I get it close? Yes. That's helpful. It'll also have a huge effect on democratizing the workforce as well. So I work with people who really struggle with math, who struggle with writing, who struggle with various things for a variety of reasons, who deal with being neurospicy, where they have ADHD or autism or something like that. And AI can be incredibly powerful to bring these incredible talents into the modern workforce and help amplify what they're already good at by helping translate those talents into kind of corporate speak a lot better. There's some really, really cool stuff happening there as well, which if you're not paying attention to, you should. Now, there are issues around AI being incredibly white male bias focused, but that'll get fixed with time as we get more and more people into the space and get more and more prompts into the system. So it's really fun.
I love those answers. Before we close, I'm going to give my 2 cents on this, and then we're going to go to the next panel. We've run over, but we have 7 minutes break. But I like AI for research, specifically personalization. I'll always rip that for any email I send to see what it gives me. 9 out of 10 times, I will not use it. But that 1 out of 10, it might be more like 1 out of 20. It's going to give me something so gold. And it did. Like, hey, saw you speak at B2BMX. Was this one? And I jumped in and I'm like, I missed that session. Like, I put my own bit in, but like, I really wanted to go because I had 5 friends there and I got a response really fast from like a VP level contact. The second thing, I do think it's going to be great in creating that like better ICP or perfect ICP. Anthony has 150 accounts in his territory, but he's only going to reach out to 40 of them at any given time because they show one trigger or another or something. I think it's going to help us figure out that in pretty short order. If it's not already, tools like Reggie.ai focus on that part. They focus on it from like looking at the static data. I think they'll probably add the dynamic, the hiring stuff is a perfect dynamic trigger and some other stuff, but it's getting there. I think sales enablement is going to see the biggest gains from this. We have Zoya's like example. That's part of it. But I also think the Gong calls and shout out Attention, who does AI that I use regularly now to write my follow-up emails for me based on all the points and do the medic automatically right into my CRM. Those are pretty badass time-saving things. But I think the future is going to be combine that with CRM, understand which conversations resulted in next steps or closed won or positive things, pull out the positive sentiment parts of that. So you don't have to listen to a 30-minute call. You can listen to a 3-minute segment and learn from other reps on your team winning deals now. Shout out Replays, who's working on something like this. I think enablement is going to take a really big step up. Anyway, thank you all for being here. I've spoken too much.
All episode, I've talked about moonshots. Now let's dive into sales tech AI. What tools are out there promising the moon, but not delivering? And how can you decide which is right for your organization that's actually going to deliver? The big question I get asked over and over is, Jake, what's out there? Like, what's new? What's exciting, right? Or what sounds promising and not necessarily delivering, right? And so, look, there's a million different tools, and instead of getting into every single one of them and how they're different, etc., what I'm going to do is share 2 definitive ways that you can determine if a sales tech AI is worth your time and worth your investment. You ready? Sales tech AI comes with a ton of bold claims, right? More leads, we'll automate this for you, we can do personalization at scale. But as more and more organizations are testing these tools, they're not seeing the results that they're hoping for. They're really hoping like, wow, can this tool do it all for me? And that's part of this, is that we have to stop thinking that sales tech with AI enabled is now going to automate everything. You've heard me preach about this and harp on it. What it can do is make our team's life easier and hopefully get us having more of the right conversations. So I'm going to dive into 2 very specific ways that you can decide, is this tech right for you or not? All right, first up, okay, is learning capabilities and data quality. All right, so I want you to think about these 2 things. Learning capabilities. One of the big points of using AI, right? And also maybe just talk a little bit about the difference between generative AI and other AI, right? Is that it continues to improve over time. It doesn't need humans to pull out all the insights. It can look at the data and understand, oh, hey, this is actually the trend that you need to think about, right? In last week's episode, I talked about lead attribution marketing, right? So you were able to look and say, hey, I found a tool that can help me to look at the patterns, and it just tells me what the patterns are. So you need to make sure, ask the tough questions around, okay, how is it learning? And if a sales rep just says, it's AI, push a little bit harder, okay? And that goes into data quality. Like, one, that's on you as an organization. And again, there's plenty of AI tools out there. But before you embark on a new tech tool, if your data quality needs a lot of work, we got to go fix that first, because it's going to be building models based on and learning, if it's the right tool, based on the data that's coming in. So if you don't do a good job of making sure that the data that's getting into the system, right, and hopefully you're using tools that just pull it in automatically, so you're not relying on a salesperson to do it, and you have the capability to learn, if you don't have both of those two things together, you're still going to do a lot of manual work. So I would be pushing every single vendor, great, let's talk about learning capability. Tell me how it learns. Be more specific. Explain it to me like I'm a sixth grader, right? Same thing with data quality. Hey guys, where's our data quality? How are we looking? Do we feel like if we do feed the model, it's going to learn the right things? So that's number one, everyone. All right, number two, and I kind of gave you like a 2-for-1 on that first one anyway, is integration and usability. All right, look, and again, a tool needs to integrate into your workflow or your existing tech. Hopefully it does a little bit of both. But I also want you to think about, look, from an integration standpoint, it needs to fit the way that your customers want to buy and your sales team works. So really be smart about like, hey, is this going to be a big shift to what we're already doing? And what does that potentially mean? And that goes to number two, which is usability, right? And really, is this something that, again, most people could grasp? Is this something behind the scenes? So my tech team needs to grasp it. Is this something that sales reps are using and they need to really understand? Is this thing usable? Because although you can promise the moon, you can promise all these things, if nobody's going to use it because it doesn't fit into their workflow, again, whether the tech's able to just do things behind the scenes or if it's something more public facing or for the sales rep facing, it's got to be usable, right? So when you think about integration, think about workflow integration just as much as the tech side. A lot of people, they get the tech people on the phone, they're vetting the tech. They're like, yeah, this integrates with Salesforce. This integrates with Slack, whatever the tool is. But it more so, it's like, okay, guys, let's look at the workflow. How does this integrate there? And is this something that's actually usable? So look, no matter what the promises of sales tech AI are, if you do those things, hopefully, you will find a tool that's going to drive big impact for you. But I would be very, very cautious about just looking at one part of this, right? Whether it's usability, whether it's learning capabilities. And I'm telling you right now, there are tools that can do all of these things. So if you're going to make an investment, you're going to lean in, make sure you're looking for those things. Make sure, if you like the walkthrough here of how we think about sales tech, make sure to hit the subscribe button. And now let's jump into some of your questions.
How can sales teams better leverage AI tools for lead generation and qualification without losing the personal touch that customers value?
Well, I think, again, we've got to try to move away from this idea of like, we think generative AI is going to do our job for us. And I think instead, I think of it less about even qualification or those types of things. Again, I've talked before about send an email ahead of time, but that's not really AI, right? I think we need to stop looking at being so focused on qualifying people so that people aren't spending time in the wrong places. And instead, it's like, how do we arm our people to have higher quality conversations? So I'm a big fan of, hey, how can I leverage AI to help make sure when we get on that first call, I know as much about that person as possible. I know as much about that prospect as possible. So what can I do to make sure that that person or that individual is like, wow, that person showed up, right? Versus did I automate things or did I only get them in front of the right people?
In what ways can we improve our sales team's agility and ability to adapt to rapid market changes?
This is a tough one. I mean, trust me, there's more being thrown at people, and it's not just salespeople, it's really any job, than there ever have been before. And so I think there's a couple of different things that you can do to help your sales organization. Number one, you as a leader need to make sure you have time dedicated to always learning. When I talk to the top, smartest sales leaders, they have time. They take demos with random companies. They every once in a while will block off a full day of just learning. And then two, how do you then infuse that into your organization? So I see top leaders, they are the ones blocking out time. They are staying on top of it. And then they're encouraging their sales team to say, hey, you should have an hour blocked out to go try and do something crazy, right? Go try a new process. Go try this new video technology, etc. So you've got to, it starts at the top, and the top leaders are already doing it, but you have to empower your team and create a safe space where they feel like, yeah, I can take an hour to learn, and encourage them to do that.